In the last few months, I have become a real fan of WebAssembly. As a .NET developer who also does a lot of JavaScript development, the principle has always been .NET and JavaScript are two different worlds that cannot be combined. But then WebAssembly entered the chat and is becoming more and more a big thing in web development. I'm always trying out examples where I run .NET code in WebAssembly, and today I'll show you how to read Excel files and render them in an HTML page. When people talk about .NET and WebAssembly, they are probably talking about Blazor WebAssembly, a UI framework from Microsoft. And this is all fun and games, but I always think, what about existing web projects based on JavaScript? What if you want to use .NET in those projects too? Is that possible? And yes, it is possible. I already made a video about it where I showed how to create a PDF file in .NET in WebAssembly without using Blazor. Take a look at the top right corner if you're interested. Now I want to show you how you can easily read Excel files and render them in an HTML page using the same approach. So we are basically talking about two things in this video: how to read an Excel file in .NET and how to use that in WebAssembly to render the contents of the Excel file in HTML. The first step is to create a WebAssembly project. Before you can do this, you must install two .NET workloads, WASM Tools and WASM Experimental. This will give you new Visual Studio project templates, including the WebAssembly browser app template that I used for my example. This creates a new project with some boilerplate code, a simple example to show how it works to execute C# functions in JavaScript and vice versa. Then I created a simple class library in which I installed a NuGet package called exceldatareader.dataset, which is based on the Excel Data Reader package. This library allows you to easily read an Excel file and create a dataset from it. Next, I created a new class in my library called ExcelFileReader with a static method called readExcelFile. This method takes the file as a stream and reads the file using the Excel Data Reader. The content is then written to a dataset that is returned by the method. A very simple form of an Excel reader that should be enough to make this example work. To see if the reader works, I created a unit test that calls the method with an existing Excel file and serializes it to JSON. The sample Excel file looks like this: some user data consisting of a few records. And that gives us this, so obviously the reader works. So let's try to use this reader in WebAssembly. The first step is to create a new class in the WebAssembly project. I will just call it Excel Helper here. Here I create a method that takes a byte array, which is the Excel file. In the last video where I created a PDF file with .NET WebAssembly, we already saw that passing files via byte arrays seems to be the best option. And then in the method, I simply use the Excel file reader to create the dataset from the Excel file. Take the first table from the dataset and serialize it to JSON. With this JSON string, I call a method called renderDataTable, which doesn't exist yet, so I'll define it real quick. But I will not actually implement this method. I will use the JS import attribute and map it to a JavaScript function instead, which I will implement in a minute. And of course, I need to add the JS export attribute to the readExcelFile method, which does the magic to make this method callable from JavaScript. Then I customized the HTML file. I removed the code from the sample project and instead added a file input, a Go button, and a table with an empty header and body. All these elements are given an ID so that I can access them later in the JavaScript code. Now let's move on to the main JS file, because we have some work to do here as well. First, let's implement the renderDataTable function that we call from our C# class. Here we take the data table as a JSON string, parse it and check if the parse object is an array and contains elements. Otherwise we say goodbye here. Then I render the table header with the keys of the first entry in the data table, and then I render a table row in the table body for each entry in the data table. Next, I create a constant where I store the content of the Excel Helper C# class so that I can easily access it later. Finally, I create a click handler on the Go button that retrieves the selected file from the file input. Then I take this file and create a byte array from it, which is then passed to the readExcelFile C# function. And that's it. Now let's see if it works. I run the project and open the page in the browser. Here I select my sample Excel file from earlier and press the Go button, and the result is a simple table showing the contents of the selected file. Awesome! So, to summarize, we have created an Excel reader completely implemented in C# and called it from JavaScript without having to make an API call to a backend written in C#. Pretty neat if you ask me. Please let me know what you think. Is this interesting for you? Feel free to leave a comment. If you liked this video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to see videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye.